Right now I am filming a three-part series for all of you because if you, like me, are looking around the world we live in today, especially in America, and you're speechless, you can't believe what people are saying, what people are doing, how did we get to this point. None of this is by mistake. None of this just happened overnight. A lot of this has been in the works for decades. And if you aren't paying attention closely, if you're not looking behind the curtain to see who the Wizard of Oz is or what his motivations are, then all of this looks like just absolute chaos. So I'm going to tell you what these three-part series are. I don't have an official title of what it is or what it's going to be called, but I'll tell you this much. What I'm going to show you is not going to be easy to listen to. It's not going to be easy to understand. You're going to really have to watch. You're going to really have to listen, and you'll probably have to do some research on your own after you watch these. The first episode in this three-part series is the goals and the motivations of this political movement today. The guy I'm about to show you, his name is Yuri Beninov. He was a KGB spy, essentially, kind of like the Russian CIA back during the Soviet days. This interview here is in the, I believe, is in the late 80s, maybe late 80s, and he describes exactly what the Russians and the Soviets, the communists, are trying to do to America. Now, this episode, or this interview, is actually about 1 hour and 20 minutes long. I will link it in the description of this video. You have to watch it. Turn it on while you're going to the gym, or driving around town, or grocery shopping, or cleaning the kitchen, whatever you might be doing. This guy hits to the point. What is happening today? This is just a 13.5-minute clip. So again, I'm not going to waste your time too much. I want you to hear him, not me, and see if this doesn't sound very, 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 very shockingly accurate to what's going on right now.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion.
Now, before I get in, one more time, this guy was a defector. He worked for Russian KGB in India. He took months and months and months to plan this very elaborate getaway, and he finally made it to America. Then he became a journalist. He's written a couple of books. He's written all the internal of what they were teaching and their mindset and how they were trying to basically wage a psychological, a spiritual war on America.
That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black. You still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place, and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very...
Did you hear that part right there? Back in the late 80s, social justice. They were seeing it back then. This isn't a new idea.
unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world, that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely.
Hey, have you guys got any idea what like a crisis that might take maybe 6 weeks that would really destabilize a country? And then you might hear the terms new normal. You guys have any ideas what you might be talking about?
Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. He will go to Moscow to kiss the bottoms of new generation of Soviet assassins, never mind. He will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control. Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. The United States is in a state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. And the initiator of this war is not Comrade Andropov, of course. It's the system. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system or the world communist conspiracy, whether I scare some people or not, I don't give a hoot. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you. But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking with every second. The disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to unless you want to live in Antarctica with penguins. This is it. This is the last country of freedom and possibility.
Okay, so what do we do? What is your recommendation to the American people?
Well, the immediate thing that comes to my mind is, of course, there must be a very strong national effort to educate people in the spirit of real patriotism, number one. Number two, to explain them the real danger of socialist, communist, whatever, welfare state, big brother government. If people will fail to grasp the impending danger of that development, nothing ever can help the United States. You may kiss goodbye to your freedom, including freedoms to homosexuals, to prison inmate. All this freedom will vanish, evaporate in 5 seconds, including your precious lives. The second thing, the moment at least part of the United States population is convinced that the danger is real, they have to force their government. And I'm not talking about sending letters, signing petitions, and all this beautiful, noble activity. I'm talking about forcing United States government to stop aiding communism. Because there is no other problem more burning and urgent than to stop the Soviet military-industrial complex from destroying whatever is left of the free world. And it is very easy to do. No credits, no technology, no money, no political or diplomatic recognition, and of course no such idiocy as grain deals to USSR. The Soviet people, 270 millions of Soviets, will be eternally thankful to you if you stop aiding a bunch of murderers who sit now in Kremlin and whom President Reagan respectfully calls government. They do not govern anything, least of all such complexity as the Soviet economy. So two very simple, maybe too simplistic answers or solutions, but nevertheless they are the only solutions. Educate yourself, understand what's going on around you. You are not living at a time of peace. You are in a state of war. And you have precious little time to save yourself. You don't have much time, especially if you are talking about young generation. There's not much time left for convulsions to the beautiful disco music. Very soon it will go, just overnight. If we are talking about capitalists or wealthy businessmen, I think they are selling the rope on which they will hang very soon. If they don't stop, if they cannot curb their unsettled desire for profit, and if they keep on trading with the monster of the Soviet communism, they are going to hang very soon. And they will pray to be killed, but unfortunately they will be sent to Alaska probably to manage industry of slaves. It's simplistic. I know it sounds unpleasant. I know Americans don't like to listen to things which are unpleasant. But I have defected not to tell you the stories about such idiocy as microfilm, James Bond type espionage. This is garbage. You don't need any espionage anymore. I have come to talk about survival. It's a question of survival of this system. You may ask me, what is it in for me? Survival, obviously. Because unlike, as I said, I am now in your boat. If we sing together, we'll sing beautifully together. There is
Pretty powerful, right? Again, this guy isn't some kind of conspiracy theorist. He's been vetted, verified. He's, like I said, written many books. You can Wikipedia his name or Google it. You'll see all sorts of information on him. I want to go over a few different things he brought up that you guys might have perked your ears as well. First off, the social justice. Did you remember he said that? He says here that social justice warriors will refuse to see that the true outcomes of their ideologies, the communist, Marxist, Leninist, whatever you want to call it, the collectivist ideas, they will refuse to see it until it is too late and they are hurt themselves. Here was another interesting thing he brought up. He said, and this is this is mainly why I decided to run for this position and this whole campaign and put myself out in public to be destroyed by the haters. He says right there, he has nowhere to go. The United States is the last place of freedom, and there is nowhere left to go if we lose the United States. He also says something that I think is very, 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 relevant for today. He says that if these people do not check their need for profits, I believe that they are selling the rope that will then hang themselves with. Does that not sound like Starbucks today and McDonald's today and heck, even the NFL today? I mean, they say over the weekend the NFL is about to start playing the Black National Anthem and possibly even fly the Black Lives Matter flag. You know, Starbucks is saying wear Black Lives Matter masks. McDonald's changed all of their social media profiles to Black Lives Matter logos and everything. And not that the Black Lives Matter as an idea doesn't have any merit to it, but the Black Lives Matter organization, who all of these corporations are pandering to, they don't care. In fact, they hate these people. And once you follow these trained Marxists, as the Black Lives Matter leaders call themselves, and again, that's not my opinion, that's what they're saying, read their interviews, listen to their interviews, they're saying it. I think he's got a very, very strong point there. These people, these corporations that are pursuing profits so intently are potentially selling the rope to hang themselves. Finally, the last thing that I wanted to go over was the 4 stages of how this works. First stage, demoralization. He said that it'd take 15 to 20 years, but that's been long successful. So, I mean, we've been in like 35, 40 years of demoralization. Wouldn't you say many different aspects of our country right now are demoralized and outspokenly demoralized and degenerated? Second stage, he says 2 to 5 years to destabilize the country. I'll let you guys determine when those 2 to 5 years came to be, but I do feel like the 2 to 5 years we are in that stage now. And then 6 weeks of crisis. He says The final stage to enact this entire idea of communism, Leninism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it, socialism, there will be a 6-week crisis period, and then after that, a new normal. And he used the Czechoslovakian invasion as a great example. All the tanks came in. There were 6 weeks where they came in and they said, we're actually helping you, we're actually rescuing you, lying to their face directly. And then the new normal of, well, this is the best for Czechoslovakia. This is how Czechoslovakia will survive as a country, is if these military troops declare essentially martial law on the whole country. This guy isn't crazy. This guy has been vetted and cited many times. And he comes from the communist country, was the USSR, telling you at the very end, he says, look, I'm on your team. I'm on your team because if we lose America, we lose all humanity's hope at true freedom. And it's very, very frustrating because to go back to the social justice types will refuse to see the truth until they are put up against a wall with a bullet put in the back of their head. Because like he says, it doesn't matter what your cause is. If your cause is gay rights, they don't care in this new totalitarian way of governing. They think the social justice types, they think that as soon as we get this new method, this new way of governing in, then all of their social justice dreams will come true, when in reality, none of it will come true. And in fact, it would be the opposite. They would be they'll try to speak out and be counterculture to this tyrannical iron fist governing and say, wait a second, what about the gay rights or the black equality or, you name it, feminists' rights or whatever. They will be shut down, they will be silenced and thrown into gulags if they don't have a bullet put in the back of their head first. That's how this works. In this interview, he describes how this happened in, I believe it was either Cambodia or Vietnam, that the people couldn't believe that the country went from relatively free to full communist in just a couple weeks. And they said, well, they had communities, networks of people who were proud to out their neighbors, proud to out their family. They felt it was like a duty to tell people who were supporters of America and free markets and capitalism. And then when the Soviet tyrannical iron fist rulers came in, the people handed them over. It wasn't that difficult. And boom, new normal. This exact thing, what he is describing, has played out in Korea, it's played out in Cambodia, it's played out in Vietnam, it's played out in China, it's played out in Venezuela, it's played out in different periods and different times all across South America. It's played out in Russia. This isn't like a new playbook. This isn't a brave new world. We have the playbook. So this is one thing, I get this all the time. Parents and grandparents come to me, well, what should we do with our, what would you like to see? What would you, what kind of advice do you have for communicating with the youth? Show them this. If they're, encourage them to be counterculture, encourage them to be rebels, encourage them to go to high school and ask their history teacher, who is trying to put all of these political ideologies in their head, hey, what about this? What about this? Hey, how do you defend this? Encourage them to keep throwing all this back. Don't encourage them to be just good little students who just say yes and get good grades. Constantly push back. One other thing that the Yuri describes is how to cure this thing right now that we're all experiencing. And he says we have to do a full nationwide cultural reteaching of what it means to be a patriot and love your country and fight for your country. So here are 9 ideas I have that you can potentially adopt as your own personal creed and patriotism and teach to your friends and families and hopefully just carry out every day. First off, America is good. Completely agree. America is good. Secondly, I believe God and He's the center of my life. I like to modify this one more of the kingdom of God is within you. And if you are going to be in the image of God Himself, then it's coming from within you. The society, the community, your neighbors, your government cannot make you behave and try to mimic the perfection that we say is God. It's within you. Secondly, I must always try to be a more honest person than I was yesterday. The truth has no agenda. Even in the worst cases, and this is something I struggle with too because I'm human, but no matter how much it's going to hurt, just tell the truth. 4, the family is sacred. My spouse and I are the ultimate authority, not the government. This is something that really concerns me about the Black Lives Matter organization today, is right there on their website. On their website, they talk about dissolving the nuclear family and having communities raise the children. And it's very shocking because that is, I think, point 9 or point 8 in the Communist Manifesto about how to implement total communism? Go read it. The book is free on the internet. It's a free PDF. Go look. They say dissolve the family and take the children away immediately. 5, if you break the law, you pay the penalty. Justice is blind and no one is above it. I'm tired of the lip service from our elected officials who walk around shouting, Donald Trump needs to know that no one is above the law. And then they literally break the law right then. During the Ukraine impeachment hearings, how many times did Adam Schiff break the law and the Democrat Party didn't even so much as make a peep? 6, I have a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, but there is no guarantee of equal results. I think that speaks for itself. 7, I work hard for what I have and I will share it with who I want to. Government cannot force me to be charitable. I love that. 8, it is not un-American for me to disagree with authority or to share my personal opinion. This is where I talk to people about how can I help my kids or what should we do with our children or grandchildren. Right there. It is actually an American trait, American personality to be a counterculture person, to disagree with the public, to disagree with the government, to go protest peacefully. 9, the government works for me. I do not answer to them, they answer to me. Right? So these are 9 things I think that we can start off with. We could all probably agree are a very foundational belief of American way, American patriotism. These are things that we can really get on board with. So again, I hope you enjoyed this recording, this episode. Check out the other 2 parts to get the full picture. Share, write me a message, let me know what you think, okay?